Okay, welcome to the fourth section about branding. In the first three lessons, we've looked at the basis of how a brand is or how a brand works and why it matters. Then we looked at how brands help you create differences and why that's completely business critical. If there's one thing you concentrate on a brand, it's about creating differences. In the third one, we looked at values and shows you what happens if you get it right and how your business could be impacted when you get it wrong. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the really critical little things. It's quite a simple little set of lessons, this one, about how you can keep your brand alive and well. I'm going to keep it short again, and I'll give you some real examples of this in action. And I'm going to show you one, just my favourite, but absolutely enormous, brilliant mistake from a company that's huge and should have known better. So the big change has been absolutely seismic in the way that businesses interact with their customers, and the power has shifted completely from businesses to the consumer. And now the consumer has all of the power, and they can literally make or break your brand. And I think it's got to a point now where what you think doesn't matter. It's the consumer's perception that it's absolutely everything. They decide whether your brand has any value to you, or to them, sorry. And that's why you have to focus on your quality. Keep the quality. Quality isn't a brand value, it's an absolute essential. Keep your product differentiated and keep selling the truth. If you don't tell the truth, you'll be found out very, very quickly. Consumers create and maintain your brand perception. And there's so much feedback available now on social media, on the reviews platforms, that the best you can hope to do is influence perception. What you can't do is control it. So I'll show you that in a little bit more detail. Now, reviews make or break brands. There's no doubt about it. You are no longer in control. Every consumer is a reviewer, and every review is visible to the entire world. So if you get it wrong, then it becomes public immediately. If there is a mistake and it becomes public, what you have to do is let all the information out fast. Trying to bury it just does not work. Open platforms like TripAdvisor do tend to attract the extremes, those who love you and those who hate you, and they miss out the middle majority. But the review platforms now, there's other ones around like FIFO, Trustpilot and others, they change the game a little in that they ask all of your customers what they think, and this offers a much, much more balanced approach. So when I was working on Bewilderwood, which is a little children's attraction in the UK, I put FIFO in just after we opened, and at first we got criticised for not having enough toilets, for the coffee being too expensive, and for some of the kids not being supervised enough at the top of the tree houses. So at the end of the season, we listened, we built new toilets, we changed the coffee cups from 8 ounce to 12 ounce. In fact, we gave them 4 ounces of extra water, and we changed the team routines to give them better supervision. And then when we opened the next season, the review score immediately went from 80% to 98%, and it's stayed there ever since. So when customers speak, when customers have the decency to tell you that you're doing something right or doing something wrong, then you really do need to listen, because they're only telling you because they care. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. It's those who don't care enough to tell you. Now again, reviews are everywhere. This is another product that I think we've got on our products page as well, Trustis. And what these do is they're an aggregator, and they bring reviews together from everywhere. So your reviews on Google+, your reviews on Facebook, your reviews on Yelp, your reviews on all the different platforms you've got, and it brings them there to allow you to have gold stars in your search results as well. But that's covered. I think one of our colleagues is doing a more detailed study of that as well. So this is a really, really simple example. So these are 2 hotels in Nottingham. So here's the first one. And if you were coming to Nottingham, which one would you stay at? In theory, they're both the same sort of price. They're both £100-ish a night. They both have reasonable 4 stars. But then when you look at the reviews, restaurant Sat Bain, amazing experience for foodies, amazing meal and overnight stay. Or the Gresham Hotel, with that quote there that I'll never forget, it's like a sneak peek of life after death. I don't think if you were bringing your friends to Nottingham you would stay at the Gresham Hotel. And that's what I mean, whatever the Gresham Hotel can tell you till they're blue in the face that they've got a lovely hotel, but if customers are ranking it 1.5 out of 34 reviews, 1.5 out of 5 out of 34 reviews, then there's a pretty good chance that it's not a great hotel, so you'd probably want to avoid it. And perception, keep going on about perception, but brands are all about perception. Perception is everything. So this is a beautiful brand. Burberry is a beautiful aspirational brand. That's what they want you to believe. That's what they show you in their advertising. It looks stunning, doesn't it? Absolutely stunning. It's still only coats, but it looks absolutely stunning. And when they made a massive mistake, where they introduced a price point. They actually introduced a cap at £25 to aim them to grow market share, whereas previous entry point had been about £150. They attracted completely the wrong sort of crowd. And luckily for them, they managed to move back up market fast enough and get rid of these cheap products quick enough to save themselves, to save the brand. And in doing so, they did actually create $1 billion brand. But it must have been very, very close to failing completely. It was an absolute laughingstock. So no one can tell you what to believe about a brand, as they are entirely your own. Your perceptions are entirely your own. Perceptions don't always have much to do with actual truth. So here are a few of mine, and these are just silly examples, but they're the ones that I believe. So for me, Nike aren't as good as Adidas. When I was a sportsman, I always wore Adidas. I don't know why, but I just loved Adidas. I never thought Nike were good enough. For me, an Apple computer is much easier to use than a Windows PC. I know I could be accused of being an Apple fanboy, but I've never owned a PC in my whole life. I've only ever owned Apple computers. You don't get many vegetarian Audi owners, as they've taken BMW's mantra of eat what you kill customers. They've gone, it's a much, much more aggressive brand than it used to be. West Coast for me is cooler than East Coast, having travelled reasonably well down both sides. And can I make better cameras and lenses than Nikon? Again, completely personal perceptions. I'm sure if you did a blind test, then I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, but that's just my perception. And why it's so important to actually create your brand and maintain it. Now here's an example of one who got it very wrong. I know those of you in the States and the East will find that Dasani is everywhere, but it's not in the UK. And the reason it's not in the UK is that Coca-Cola looked at the growing market for bottled water in Europe, and they launched Dasani into the UK. Brand new factory, and the view was to roll it out right across the continent. But they didn't look at the little things that make the UK market unique. One of those is language. So on the day that they launched, they made a mistake, and some words have very different meanings in different markets. Their branding almost overnight, well literally overnight, became a laughingstock. And when the journalists looked a bit deeper at what Dasani water was, they found it was just filtered tap water, and they withdrew from the market, losing £7 million in less than 6 months. So this was the advert that they launched with in the UK. Now, that might not be funny in the US, but it has a very, very different meaning in the UK, I assure you, and no one would want to drink a bottle of spunk. Not a chance. So we'll move on quickly because that's a bit not safe for work. Now, keeping your customers happy. We used to talk a lot in management circles, talk a lot about creating customer delight. Creating customer delight was everything. But for me, creating customer delight isn't good enough. So I'm going to show you why. So the way you create, if someone comes in to an organisation, a shop, a retail, a restaurant, anywhere, and they have low expectations, and then they get great service or a great product, then they're delighted. So the reason they're delighted is because they had low expectations. So that, therefore, is quite easy to create customer delight. If they come in and they have low expectations and it's suitably poor, then they do get poor service, then yeah, well, it's what I was expecting. So I either put up with it or I move on. I go and find another brand to play with. So that, low expectations, poor service, yeah, that's what I expected anyway. But where the problems come is once you've delighted someone first time, then when they come back, they probably got high expectations. If you then give them poor service or not as good as the first time they met you, then they're going to be disappointed, and chances are they will leave. They won't buy your brand again, they'll depart, they'll go elsewhere. So the secret about branding is that when people have high expectations, you've got to give them great service, perhaps even better than they had before, and that's how you create devotion. Brand devotion is absolutely everything. And this is where emotive brands we talked about in the last lesson are born, and you create devotees of your brand who will stick with you through thick and thin. We've talked about some of the examples of them. Kevin Roberts wrote a fantastic book called Love Marks, and in there he describes these love mark brands. So you've got the likes of Apple, Sony, Virgin, Harley Davidson, and others like that, where people will pay all over and above just because they want to actually interact with that brand. Now, this is quite an important one. This guy, I describe as our second hero of branding, really, because he's an accidental hero of branding. He's called Tony Parsons, and he wrote a book, Man and Wife. He wrote a series of books, actually. They're fictional books. But in there, it's in theory they're fictional, but they're about his life. He asks his mum how, just after he lost his father, how they managed to stay married for 50 years, which is a good length of time by anyone's standards. And the thing she answered to me has absolute relevance to branding. So what she said was, we managed to stay married for all of that time by learning to fall in love over and over again. So I'll just repeat that. They managed to stay married for all that time by learning to fall in love over and over again. And that, to me, that's what you have to do as a brand owner. You have to give reasons for your customers to fall in love and rediscover what is great about your brand over and over. So you have to keep reinventing your brand. You have to keep finding new ways of either attracting new audience, younger people into your brand, or making sure that the people who are growing up with your brand continue to love it. So those are the really big decisions. And that, to me, is one of the biggest secrets of branding, and one that's often overlooked. So just in summary of this last little bit now, that's it for there. So you don't own your brand, your customers do. So the way around it is you have to listen to what they say and react to their feedback. However unfair it may seem to you, it's their perception and therefore their own reality. They own the reality, they own everything. All you do is try and provide them with products. So to create long-term brand devotion, you have to surprise them, you have to delight them, and you have to care for your customers. You have to keep delivering on their increasingly high expectations. And that's how you get towards brand devotion. That's how you create love marks. And finally, you have to give them reasons to fall in love with your brand over and over again. The secret to all branding is giving them reasons to fall in love with you over and over again. Why would they buy Adidas over Nike? Maybe there's something different, some innovation, something that you just can't resist having. You just have to want to associate your tribe, your personal tribe, with their brand. So that's it. That's, for me, a bit of an intro about branding. I've done it in 4 short lessons. So now what I want you to do is go out and create differences. Really sit down and think, well, okay, why is my product different? Why should people care about those differences? And go out there and help create a brilliant perception of why your brand matters, and more importantly, why your customers should care. Thank you very much.